Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jesudasen. I know most of you, so it feels weird introducing myself, but I'm so excited to share with you all today. This topic is really close to my heart. I believe that we are a sum total of our experiences, so I think that God created us with different aspects of our lives that are intertwined. So as much as we'd like to compartmentalize our lives through work and friends and family, I think they overlap, even if we try for it not to. So I think that every experience, every emotion, every person that we come across, every heartbreak, every triumph, we are a product of all of these things. And so for me, as a 21-year-old who's about to graduate, I can stand here and say that I am a product of all of these experiences, and more importantly for this presentation, I'm a product of all of the different lessons I've learned about leadership. And so whether that's through different family members or my mom or different advisors or bosses that I've gotten to work with, I can stand here and say that I'm a product of all of those lessons that I've learned. And I've even learned from people who have led well and also people who haven't led well. And those are the things that I'm also grateful for because I've learned from both spectrums. The topic of leadership has always been an interest of mine, whether that's been in the context of family dynamics or student government in high school or different positions I've had at Biola. I have always been drawn to student leadership and leadership in general. I've done this through carefully observing the leaders I've gotten to work with, or even reading about leadership in books. I think what can be a misconception of what leadership is that we often have this perfect image of what the perfect strong leader looks like. So we might think to be a leader, we have to be strong and courageous and maybe outspoken or maybe a good public speaker. And so I think for me in high school, I thought I had to be fearless. And through the different experiences I thought I had to fear nothing. And that was terrifying as a senior in high school. And so for a little bit of context, I was student body president in high school. And so when I got this position, I remember thinking that I couldn't mess up and I didn't have a safe place to mess up to learn from those things. The cool thing about leadership is that when you do good things and you achieve well, people can see it, but also when you make mistakes, people can also see it just as much, if not more. And so it wasn't that my experience in high school was a negative one. In fact, it was pretty life-changing. This is what instilled my desire for leadership in my life. And so it wasn't until I came to Biola and became a student leader that I experienced this safe place to grow and to mess up and to make mistakes and to grow as a leader in just like who I am. I've come to believe that this was due to the people who have invested into my life at Biola. So before I get into the nitty-gritty part of this presentation, I wanted you all to get a glimpse of how the different experiences I've had in high school and now at Biola have allowed me to become extremely passionate about higher education and leadership and student development, because I am a product of what it looks like for faculty and staff and parents and family members to pour into you, even if they know it or not. And so, like I said, I'm about to graduate in a few weeks. And so where does that leave me as a young woman who aspires to be a leader someday? Which leads me to my topic, which is women in Christian higher education leadership. Women in leadership this has become an increasingly controversial and research topic in the last few decades, I would say. In the past election, we witnessed the first female candidate to run for the highest office of presidency. And so although Senator Hillary Clinton did not win the election, I think this conversation of women in authority has increased, whether that's in the church, whether that's in government, or in this case in higher ed positions. From multiple studies and observations, there tends to be a worldwide assumption that women in leadership, specifically in Christian higher ed, face difficulty achieving positions of authority or leadership in that spectrum. And if they do receive that position, they often receive a lower salary than if they were a male. The authors of Women in Leadership, The Future of Christian Higher Education, explain the following. They noted that although the numbers of women attaining degrees had increased, the women now earning the majority of degrees across all levels, little has changed in the representation of pay of women and leaders in higher ed. They continue to discuss that women were only 10% of full-time professors, 26% of university presidents, and women accounted for less than 30% of all college and board members. So prior to this presentation, I conducted a bit of my own research just on this topic alone to get kind of like what the root of this issue was. And so I read into mission statements of higher ed institutions. I studied leadership styles of women all across the board. And then I studied the significance of the degree when it comes to attaining positions. So what does having your master's look like, or having your PhD in regards to getting a job? So while exploring the importance of mission statements at these institutions, I came across a study that claimed mission statements reach into people's hearts and souls and motivate them to collaborate toward a cause that provides them with the opportunity to make a difference in the world. So this study focused on the mission statement aspect of Christian higher ed. How does the wording and the structure of a mission statement influence the foundational structure of an institution? If Christian higher ed institutions reformatted their mission statements, would that be more inclusive of all men and all women? And would that affect the experiences of those women leaders? And then we have to ask ourselves, if the mission statements of these institutions do not reflect the desire to include all men and to include all women, is this a question of theology, or is it just something that was simply overlooked? So I came across another study that dived into the significance of a degree. So with the comparison between educational levels and degrees, so like I said, master's, PhD level, it was noted that even with a woman advanced in her education, she will still come opposed to certain barriers. So the authors of the study brought up a common scenario that happens today. If a man and a woman had completed the same amount of education, received their degree, and then went to go apply for the same job in higher ed, the man would often get the position. So what does it look like for young females to pursue a career towards leadership at any capacity, let alone at a place like Biola and other Christian higher ed institutions? Do the same barriers exist for women aspiring to be leaders today that they did decades ago? The involvement of both male and female leaders in the making of decisions is crucial, especially in our day of age. So in this presentation, I'm not saying that women leaders are more important than men at all. I think I've just come to believe that we need both. We need both men and women to make these crucial decisions. And so women in leadership at Biola, like Dr. Deb Taylor and Carrie Stockton, they've climbed a ladder and have experienced barriers that no other man has probably faced on this campus. The very fact alone that Dr. Deb Taylor is in her role of provost and senior vice president is a huge accomplishment for Biola. 3 or 4 years ago, this would have never happened. So that's really exciting for Biola. Biola has made quite a few steps in the last decade in order to create that safe and more inclusive environment for everybody. Biola is also in the season of engaging in this conversation, which has been so interesting studying this topic this semester. So I think as an institution, we were finally asking ourselves the questions in regards to women in leadership. From interviews and research that I've conducted on my own, I've seen women at Biola in these positions describe the gender climate as hopeful. And so we were in a trajectory of moving forward because we were talking about it, but we need to see if we're actually making change. And so something to note here is when some people say the gender climate here is hopeful, some other women describe that same thing as injustice or offensive or sometimes hurtful. And so that's what we really need to pay attention to because each experience differs from the other. As a young professional, to prepare to get into roles that not only pertain to my interest in PR, but also my passion for Christian higher ed, where do I fit into all of this? Should I even be pursuing a career that kind of has all odds against me? I'm young, I'm a woman, and I'm an ethnic minority. So I've had to ask myself the question, will I ever be a leader someday? A couple of months ago, I attended the second annual conference for women in Christian higher ed leadership, and that was really cool because it was held here at Biola's campus. And this is where 600 leaders from CCCU institutions, so that's the Council for Christian Colleges and Universities, 600 men and women gathered at this conference to engage in this conversation, just to kind of scope out how the climate has been this year. You wouldn't believe, but all odds were sort of against me going to this conference for different reasons, but some reason I found myself sitting in the first session in the first row crying when the light bulb kind of went off for me because I think I was facing all these fears that were in my mind. And Dr. Kim Danu, she's the vice president of APU, she spoke on the vital importance of incorporating leadership and courage, and how that as any leader and any woman, there takes a certain amount of courage to overcome the barriers that will be thrown at you. So Dr. Danu ended her talk by saying, if it doesn't scare you, then you wouldn't have to have courage, and courage is what builds a great leader, hence the tears. This semester has been a journey in discovering what I really am passionate about. I know that the Lord has designed me to work with people. According to StrengthsFinder, one of my top 5 strengths is empathy. So let me tell you, this has been the best thing, but also one of the hardest things because I feel so deeply with other people. And so I love sitting with people where they're at in the highs and the lows. But as you can imagine, with an empathy meter so sensitive as mine, it can get exhausting sometimes. But still, I think the Lord has put that desire in my heart to just sit with people and be a leader and be a change agent. And so for me, I've had to ask myself, how do I do this and where do I do this? And I think when we really think about passion and calling, we are so afraid, at least I am. I'm afraid that I'm not going to complete God's will, or that I'm going to screw it all up by deciding whether or not to go to grad school or whether or not to take the job. And so the question we are always asking ourselves is this what you have for me, Lord? When I came into Biola as a freshman, I came in undeclared. So I enjoyed taking all my general ed classes. And then up until my sophomore year, this is where I found my knack for public relations, just because my life is very much fueled by the relationships around me. My passion for working with people in an administrative setting, yet relational setting, has been grown through the different leadership positions I've had at Biola. Working at Biola as a student leader has very much changed my life. Through the different conversations I've been invited to be a part of, or just different decision-making processes that I've gotten to sit in on, or even getting to hire and lead my own staff this year has been life-changing. I've learned so much about Biola and about higher ed, and also as myself as a leader and a child of God. So through different experiences as a student leader, I have been mentored and poured into by countless amount of staff and faculty. Whether that has been through office hours with my professors, or meetings with my SG advisor for work, or even getting to work with higher up administrators like Dr. Taylor or Andre Stevens has been so awesome. And even more on a personal level, I got to ask one of my professors' wives to be one of my spiritual mentors, which has been awesome. And so I've just been changed by their wisdom and their counsel on all spectrums. So taking my experiences as a student leader at Biola and the ways I've been poured into by the administrators and professors and the people I've interacted with, and then taking my love for leadership and change, I am so looking forward to pursuing a career in higher education. The plan right now is to go into grad school for my Master's of Science in Higher Education Leadership and Student Development. And so this is so that one day I can counsel and I can encourage and I can pour into the student leaders just as I was poured into as a student leader here. These last 4 years in student leadership has been so formative for me and so eye-opening, and I truly believe that this is because people here at Biola have fought for my personhood. They have fought for student leadership. They have allowed me to develop into the person I am today. They've mentored me, and I think most importantly, they created a safe space for me to make mistakes and to fail, but also have encouraged me to challenge myself. I no longer picture the perfect leader as someone who has to be fearless in all areas of life. And I think the best leaders are created when someone does come alongside them and allows them to make mistakes and fail, and then pushes them to challenge themselves and improve as an overall person and a leader and a child of God. So I've been fortunate enough to have many good and strong leaders pour into a developing leader, and as a result, I am forever changed. I am forever grateful. I want to end with this quote by Chris Hadfield. He said, "Ultimately, leadership is not about glorious crowning acts. It's about keeping your team focused on a goal and motivated to do their best to achieve it, especially when the stakes are high and the consequences really matter." And this is my favorite part. "It is about laying the groundwork for others' success and then standing back and letting them shine." And so in so many ways, the leaders here at Biola have laid the groundwork and then stood back and let me shine. So a few years from now, my dream would look a lot like being one of those leaders that lays the groundwork for students to succeed, that pours into students and mentors them and encourages them to make mistakes and to fail, and then standing back and letting them shine. That concludes, I don't know, I'm getting so emotional. That concludes my time. Thank you guys so much. If you guys have any questions, I'd love to answer. But if not, thank you for listening.